All right, this is Jim Miller. I'm going to talk about how to run the Washington State Math Council High School contest at the site. And so we have this document called the Guidelines for Regional Directors 2017. Can be used by regional directors or site coordinators. And the first page talks about what the contest day looks like, how it kind of goes through. And I'm going to kind of go through that in a little bit here. Before, prior to this second page talks about setting up, getting set for it, including the refreshments, and I'll talk about that a little bit later. Nuts and bolts, you might want to read through that and get some of the details there, and about the awards and final presentation. This talks about what people are going to do in here, and I'm going to try to cover that in my verbal description. But this kind of goes through the whole thing here on the day of and the whole thing. So, but we'll go back to the first here. So let's imagine that you're at the contest site and you've done some things to prep for this, which you may not be familiar with. And so as we come to the things that need to be prepped, I'll talk about what should have been done ahead of time. So the contest day, you're going to have registration, and it's usually about 45 minutes. If you got a smaller participation region, it might only take a half hour or something like that. But you encourage teams to be there a little bit early so you don't have to rush at the last minute to try to get things started. Usually you might tell them a brief introduction about where to register and where coaches, teams, and parents and volunteers can all go, and encourage them to have fun. So at registration, at the registration table, they need to register their teams. Now you may have sent a pre-registration form to them that looks like, let's see if I can find it here. Yes. So if they come and have one of these filled out, that'll save you some time. So you need to get this to your coaches. And I'm going to send one of these out right soon, so that they should have one also for the coaches that I have. They've been there in the past, but you know your coaches now, so please send one of these to them and tell them that, please fill it out before you get there. We want the school name, address, city, zip code, and all that kind of stuff. Fax is not so important these days. If they don't know the region number, that shouldn't be a problem, but they should know whether they're a school or smaller, which would be Division II, or a double A, triple A, quad A school, and that would be Division I. They should have all their seniors listed in the senior section, all the juniors in the junior section, sophomores in the sophomore section, and freshmen in the freshman section. And if they have a project, they should have a team number for that. They might have two projects, and so there'll be the people on team 1 and the team on 2, maybe a team 3. Up to 6 people on a project. Team problem, there should be 3, no more than 1 per grade level, up to 3 team members. And so you would put a team number 1 wherever the 3 people are in the team box. Then they need to fill out the topical. And this is all explained on a video on how to fill out the spreadsheet. But they should read the rules to know how to fill that out. It'd be nice if they came with this, but that's sometimes registration, you end up having the coaches fill in the spreadsheet themselves with their teams and team numbers. But someone should check that knows what's going on them. Okay. The coaches also need them to volunteer, and so there's a volunteer sign-up sheet that you can volunteer to score the team problem, or you can score topical problems, and you need to proctor in rooms, and so there's a proctor sign-up form that, this is the proctor's directions. Proctor's sign-up form. No, I'm not seeing it here, but okay. So you want to get them to volunteer, the coaches and or parents and anybody you can to help you run the site. So ask for those volunteers. Okay, so after they've registered, given the information so that can be input into the computer, they will be then going to, you want to give them an orientation about where restrooms are and to have fun and all that sort of thing. And then the team problem proctors will pick up packets for the room. And in the packets, there'll be copies of the test already sorted. And I've got a picture here of what should be in the team problem packet. Come on, open up here. So there should be 3 copies of the team problem, at least 3 pages of scratch paper, 4 or 5 or 6 is more appropriate, and then a team answer sheet. And all of their final answers go in here, but they can use the scratch paper to develop their responses to the prompts that are in the team problem. You want the proctor is supposed to, when they read the directions, it tells them to put in their school name and their team number that they're on and their names. Now, there is a JV sheet, and you don't want to give that to any team that's participating in varsity because there are hints on it. Now, if they get the JV team hint sheet, that automatically precludes them from qualifying for state. If they have a varsity one, then they are eligible to qualify for state. Okay? So you'll make a set of these and then another set and stack them at 90 degrees to that first set and another set at 90 degrees from the first one and keep stacking the whole set so that there's enough sets for the number of teams in a room plus a few extra. You may want to do several extras, and you probably should send with that some extra scratch paper. And with that, you're going to put the proctor's directions, which are these. And for the team problem, this is the proctor's directions. So there'll be a sheet in there that the proctor can read. Okay, so while the kids are in their rooms taking the team problem, which will be about an hour long, the scorers for the project, and you need to have several, will be scoring the project. And but they don't have answer sheets yet to score. They need to get familiar with the problem, so they will get a copy of the problem also, and they'll also get a chance to look at the scoring rubric and the answers. Now, before you give them the answers, just give the folks that are going to be doing the scoring about a half an hour to work on the problem themselves. And they'll get a feel for how the problem will, what the problem is asking for and what kind of questions there are. They may not be able to solve the whole thing in the half hour, but they'll have enough time to look at it and kind of figure out what the different parts are and how difficult they are to score. Then at about the halfway point, you can give them the rubric and the answer sheet, and they can kind of go through and see if they can get the answers and how they're derived and that sort of thing, and get a chance to see how the points should be awarded according to the rubric. Then the scorers in that room can sit down and decide who's going to score parts A and B and C. And it might be just one person always scoring the same 3 parts, but for consistency, we want scorers to score all of them in some sections, and then other scorers to score other sections. Usually there's not enough time for everybody to look at every section, so you kind of split the task to make it easier for folks. And so after you do that, then they can work their way through it, and that has worked pretty well, and it makes it pretty efficient, and it's kind of fun to work with the team on the scoring. Okay, so by the time the kids are done with the team problem, the scorers should be ready to score the team problem. And so when the team problem is done, someone needs to pick up, a runner or someone, pick up the answer sheets, and the answer sheets are the only thing they need to pick up from the teams. and take them to the scorers. And then with a short break, and sometimes regions will have some snacks set out, and you have an allowance of about $1 or so per student to have some inexpensive snacks, maybe some pretzels or some nuts or whatever you think might work. Maybe some hard candy or something so that they can just get a little bit of energized. But there's not going to be a lot of time between the team problem and the time when they reorganize into their new sets of teams for the topical problem. Now, when they get ready to do the topical problem, they'll go to the rooms and there'll be another stack of papers sorted similarly to the team problem. There'll be the part 1, which will be 3 pages if they're on the team, and since this is only 30 minutes, they only need 3 sheets of scratch paper and an answer key. And however, there could be people taking the topical problems on an individual basis, and then there should be another set of packets of answer problem sets for the individuals, which would have 1 sheet of problems and maybe a couple pieces of scratch paper and an answer form. So the proctor that's going to proctor this particular session, it might be the same proctors that were doing the team problem one, but whoever's doing it should go to the room and set these out on the tables ready for the students. And of course, when they get there, they need to fill out right away their information. That this part doesn't need to be timed. They need to put their names and their school name and their team number. It doesn't say that on the answer sheet. It should. Their team number on there. Okay. So then the proctor reads the directions for the team problem, a topical team. And if they're working as an individual, there's a section for reading the directions for, excuse me, the topical individual. Okay. So they'll go ahead and do this, and that'll be a 30-minute time thing, and then someone needs to pick up the answer sheets and bring them to the scoring room, and someone else, and then they can go right into the second part, and the second part will be part 2, and they'll have the same kind of sorting, 3 tests, 3 scratch papers, and an answer sheet for the teams doing that, and a single test with 2 sheets of scratch paper and an answer form for those taking the second part as an individual. And as all those papers are graded, and often the scorers will, one person on the topical will score them once, and then a second person will double check to make sure they're scored correctly. And when they score the topical, they get 5 points for a correct answer, 1 point for a no answer, and 0 points for a wrong answer. And that points awarding system is to help prevent students from just guessing. Okay. So then, when those papers come in and are scored, then they should be put into the spreadsheet. So you might want to have a person designated to enter those scores. It doesn't take a long time, and refer to the video on how to enter scores into the spreadsheet for doing that. So when that gets done, you need to have someone who has been familiar with project, and this has kind of been going on. You need to have, if you have projects, if you don't have any projects in your region, you should know that by now, by the time of the contest gets there, you should have someone who is somewhat familiar with grading projects ready to do that. And the project presentations usually follow the topical problems part 2. Now, the projects, the written report has already been evaluated by our esteemed professor from Seattle U, Mark Roddy, and he will send all the scores for the team projects in your region to you so that you have them. And then it's up to you to come up with someone to score their presentation, their display, I should say, and then also their presentation, which is a 5-minute presentation per project. And the rubric is with all of that, and you can look up the rubrics on our webpage if you need. So they need to score those and give feedback to the teams on how they might improve. Since we have not reached our limit of how many projects we can accept at state, usually every project gets qualifies for state, and that also gives them a chance to revise it before they get to state. And so your feedback is important, and so if that can be done, it can be done informally as far as comments to the team, or it could be done as a written thing, but that's a lot of work, so often it's just some comments that you might pass on. Anyway, so get those projects are presented, and the displays are usually graded during the team problem or during the topical problems when there's a chance, and you're allowed to quiz a few of the excuse me, the panel members, maybe perhaps between the team problem competition and the topical, or after the topical and before they go on to do their presentation. All right, so then those scores should come back once you get a chance to do those, but you may need some time to do that. And so then we have the regional no down, which can be done pretty quickly and scored right away. Now, for the regional no down, there's you only need a projector to project a PowerPoint, and the PowerPoint will look something like this. When you put it up, and I'm not going to run it so I can move through it more easily here. This will be the first page. Excuse me. And then on you'll project this up on the screen, and you get the student participants from each school ready to participate. Now, for example, in Region 4, where they might only have 2 or 3 schools, then we often allow more students from each school to participate. You need to keep the total number of participants in the no down in the region to under 30. In most regions, that's not an issue. The rules say up to 3 from each school. So if there's 10 schools in your region, that would be 30. We haven't had a problem with that, and if we do, we'll need to create more. So you get those set up and lined up randomly for this no down, which is like a math bee with some twists. So you say, okay, now we're going to go into the first round, and you show the second slide of the PowerPoint, and then you show the third slide, and you tell them the MC of this will read this to the students, and then you go to the next slide, and then it becomes the MC reads questions to the students. So let me show you what that looks like. They will have a copy of this. And so the same reading that's on the slide is in here, and then they will read this to the first individual, and they will have the 10 seconds to answer, and their final answer in the 10 seconds is the accepted one, and they can cut off the 10 seconds if they say that's our final answer or whatever. So, and let's see, what was I going to say? Oh, and if you want to use the first question as just a dry run for everybody, just so that they get familiar with however the person is going to read the questions, that would be fine. But then it's one question per participant, Not everybody, only one person gets each of the questions. If they miss, they miss. You go on to the next question. You don't pass the question on to the next person. Okay, and so that's a little bit different than the spelling bee also. So then you just go through this, and if they miss the question in the first round, it's pretty brutal. They get to be excused from the competition. Once you get done with the first round, then you can go back to the PowerPoint and show that everybody that you're going into the second round and read the directions for the second round. And the second round's a little different. They have 5 questions, and all of them get a chance to answer all 5 questions. Each question they have 15 seconds to answer, and it tells you how they do it, and they get a point for each answer they get correct. And if they are in the lead or among the top 3, they get to go into the tie-breaking round, which is round 3. So at this point, you're going to have them sit at a table. So you need to have handy, you won't need tables for all 27 of them. Usually a few drop out, and so then you're down to maybe 20, 15 students left, and you'll need some pencil and paper or whiteboards and white markers or something like that so that they can write their answers on and do their work on it. So you read the directions to them, and they're sitting there, and then you go to the blank screen here, and again the presenter, the MC, reads the first question. Then and for timing these, you should you have to read the question twice, and you should give them enough time to absorb the question. So read the question again, maybe give them 2 or 3 seconds to kind of absorb the question, and then start counting the 15 seconds in this. Similarly, on the question 1, don't start counting the 10 seconds immediately. Give them a second to absorb it after you've read the question twice. And you always read the question twice. So they answer 1. You don't have to tell everybody whether they got the first one right, but you might want a couple of coaches helping you score and see who does get them right and keep track of who's got which one's right. There may be some discussion on whether a right answer is considered, and that'll be by agreement amongst the officials, the judges, the adults, the coaches there. You can decide whether you think they are. So you'll go through all 5 of these, and once you get done with all 5, we're trying to pick the top 3 plus an alternate. So if there's only 3 that are in the lead, have more points than the others, then you're pretty much done, other than if they're tied, you want to do a tiebreakers. And that's round 3. But you do all 5 questions in round 2. So in round 3, going back to the PowerPoint, here are the directions. They now get 20 seconds. They get to use their calculators and the pencils and papers that they had from the second round. And there should be some scratch paper for that. All right, so they're in the third round now, and this is it. And this time, they have to be seated, so you might have to turn them around on the table so they can see the screen that has the problem projected. So then you say, let's begin, and then you just forward 1 slide on there, and here would be the first question that they have. And so then after you read, whoever's doing the timing reads this to themselves, maybe twice, and then say, okay, I've got the question absorbed. Then start timing the 20 seconds on this, and when they get done, they do the 3, 2, 1, pencils down, and again, people score it, and you go until you know who's number 1, number 2, number 3, and who's the alternate. And you can read the rules for a little bit better clarification on that, but that's kind of how the no down goes. So by the time you're done with no down, it's all been scored because you know who's number 1, 2, 3, and 4. All right. So now, hopefully by this time, the no down is all done, and the team problem has been all scored, and all the scores have been entered, and the topical have been all scored and entered, and the The project scores have been all entered into the spreadsheet, and you know who is first, second, and third in each of the categories that have the awards. And so you want to set up to do a little awards ceremony here. And the team project, there'll be a plaque and 6 rosettes for first place, a plaque for second, and a plaque for third. And again, all those qualify for state. The rules for qualifying for state are in the rules, so refer to them to know. So don't just tell schools they've qualified for state. First place is generally to all qualified. I'll kind of mention a couple things here, but there are the extended other ways to qualify for state. So look at the rules. Team problem Division 1, there's a first, second, and third. And also on those, there is no ties. Read the rules. It says if there is a tie on a Division 1 school with some other one, and for the first, second, or third, their answer sheets need to be taken back to the judges and said, break the tie. So there should be no ties for team problem or for Division 1 or Division 2. But anyway, someone can write on this sheet from the scorer's Excel spreadsheet, or they can just print out the Excel spreadsheet. Usually there's not a printer easily accessed, so you just write in the names of the first, second, and third. Okay, then there's topical team Division 1, first, second, and third, and Division 2, first, second, third. There is no way to break ties, so there may be ties in here. And if there are, I need to hear what they are and who they are from what school, and then I will, what school did not get their plaque and rosettes or a plaque, and I will send duplicates to them. Okay, so that's topical team Division 1 and 2. And topical individuals, there may be ties. Topical individual needs a little bit of clarification. You want to read the rules on this, but the idea is you take the top 3 individuals and they get first, second, and third. They all qualify for state. After you remove them from the list of topical individuals, then you look for the highest scoring senior that wasn't in the top 3. And that senior gets a rosette, and they're called Distinguished Senior. And then you get a Distinguished Junior out of this by finding the highest scoring junior that is not one of the top 3. And they get Distinguished Junior. And similarly, a Distinguished Sophomore, the highest sophomore that's not in the top 3. And Distinguished Freshman, the highest freshman and not in the top 3. And these distinguished senior, junior, sophomore, and freshman also qualify for state. In the no down, by the way, there's no place in the spreadsheet for scoring the no down other than on the very first info page, the names of and school names for the top 3 and the alternate should be put in there. And there's a plaque for the top no down person, and a medal and a rosette. And all top 3 places of the no down qualify for state. The alternate gets in if one of the top 3 in their region doesn't make it to state. Okay, so that's the awards page, and you should have all those awards sent to you or picked up, so you have all the awards to give to them. And once you finish that, you're done with the contest, and you can give a big sigh of relief, and then you can perhaps ask the students and coaches to help clean up the place a little bit for you, and be sure and thank the schools for allowing you to host it at wherever site that is. And that's pretty much the overview of how the contest runs. You can go for more nitty-gritty details here by reading through this document, Guideline for Regional Directors. And you can ask me questions. You can call me or email me. My email address and phone number are is on the spreadsheet. Please get the results to me as quickly as possible. Coaches need to. Some districts are pretty tough on coaches as far as getting transportation, and they need to know as soon as possible so they can reserve vans or buses or whatever they need to get to state. They want to reserve hotel rooms, and so they want to know as quickly as possible. So get the scoring spreadsheet to me, email it to me right away. And if you have extra plaques and ribbons, please forward them to me. Oh, I forgot a couple things here. One thing is when the coaches arrive, you might want to create an envelope for the teams during registration for each of the schools that show up, and then ask them how many participants they have, and put the enough certificates for the coach into the envelope right away. You might want to put blank copies of each of the tests in the envelope. Don't give them to the coaches until after the competition, so that you have a chance to put their answer sheets into the envelopes, and so the coaches can pick up all the students' work, their answer sheets, and blank copies and the certificates for the kids to take home with them, along with all their ribbons and plaques that they may have won. I think that kind of concludes it here. Please read through the other details, and that should help you be ready for the regional competition of the Washington State Math Council High School Contest. And thank you again. This is Jim Miller signing off.